Remind me about movie theaters in Monticello, and I'll tell you later. Just remind me about a crowd. Yeah, no. Totally can sit there. My God, I'm hot. Shabbat Shalom to those that are with me in the sanctuary and those that perhaps are in the Zoomiverse out there or YouTube, who knows who's out there today. We welcome you in the rainiest of days. But listen, I think I'd rather have the rain than what I think is going to happen in the next 2 days. I think it's going to be a little hot. I think it's going to be really hot. So if we can soak up the coolness now and bring that through Shabbat, that could help us. My name is Ronnie Pressman. I'm one of the clergy members here, clergy assistant, and it is wonderful to be here on Shabbat. Wonderful to be inside in the coolness, the breeze that's in this space. We'll begin this evening on page 24 as we welcome Shabbat. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Sharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Sharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malchei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's go to the fourth verse. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malchei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So at Pesach, we leave an empty seat for Elijah. There's an empty seat next to me. I don't think Elijah's going to be visiting tonight, but Rabbi Katz will be here. He was held up. So expect another person here. It is my privilege, my honor to call two smiling boys. Okay, one just walked out. He had to run out for a minute. 2 guys to come up with their parents, Kyle and Jackson. Oh, Kyle. Go get him, go get him, go get him. Who will become bar mitzvah tomorrow, to come up with their mom and dad to come light our Shabbat candles. We turn to page 2. So folks, come up and join me. Okay, you have to go sometimes. It's just how it goes. Irene, will you do me a huge favor? Glenn didn't bring me the Kiddush cups, and we really need them. Thanks. So we'll take it really slowly. Really slowly. Come up, Nancy. Wait. Do me a favor, grab this. Grab that. Pull. Pull, pull, pull. Okay, give it to Mom. Okay. Hi, sweetie. Yeah. We're on page 3.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
You can do this.
You should.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Excellent. Gentlemen, if you can grab one of those Kiddush cups, one for each. Okay. Do a left-hander hold. You can hold it for both. We're on page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotah v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava ufratzon hinchilanu zikarel ma'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehila mimikrayei kodesh zecher lisiat mitzrayim Kivanu v'charta, ke'odanu midashta, mikol ha'amim. B'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon, chinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, mekodesh ha'shabbat.
Amen. L'chaim. You can put the cups down. Thanks, you guys. Goes in. Thank you. So you don't need your siddur for the next part, because you're going to take a look at the screen. It's been my job each year, which I'm thrilled with, to count the Omer. I just had a visitor over the weekend. As my grandson called it, my old rabbi. He's not really old, but he's previous rabbi that I used to go to the synagogue in Monroe, New York. And he always used to say, we don't just count the days, we make our days count. And I reminded him of it, and he looked at me, and this grin from ear to ear was like, okay, somebody was actually listening, which I thought was kind of cool. So, Matt, if you can move those pictures up to the top of that, of the people that are here on Zoom so everyone can see the Hebrew, that would work really well. And if we can't, we'll squint. So we say in Hebrew, Hineni muchan umzuman lekayem mitzvat aser shel sfirat haomer. And I don't say it myself, but I say it for you and ask you to join me in the English where it says, I am ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer.
Did that do it?
No, but it's okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer al sfirat haomer al sfirat haomer al sfirat haomer. Matt, can you move ahead 2 screens for us, please? Oh my goodness, that's a gigantic one. As we count the day, Hayom Chamisha Ushloshim Yom Shehem Chamisha Shavuot LaOmer. Today is 35 days, which is 5 weeks of the Omer. Today's intersection of characteristics is Malchut Shebchod, leadership in humility. One day, a man called out a slanderous comment to King David. As his guards moved in to put the man in his place, King David said, "Leave him be. If he is saying this to me, then I am meant to hear it." The greatest measure of humility is knowing that the Creator is the voice behind everything we hear. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a moment. Take a nice deep breath and try to hear that kol demama daka, that still small voice. That voice that's internal to us. We are all created in God's image. Therefore, what part of us is created equally? It's that breath of life. Kol demama daka, that still small voice. So try to listen to what the Creator's telling you. Perhaps this is the opportunity for you to actually breathe in that nice cool breeze, but the essence of a bit of Shabbat. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Hello.
shalom. Hello.
Hi.
We're going to turn now, if I think I know where we are, to page number 20. And we'll
You're
join
right.
together in Lachadodi. And I'm so glad. It's wonderful to be able to bounce around to different parts of the community. I don't know if Ronnie told you where I was tonight, but it was, we have one of our flagship programs at our religious school is that is a kindergarten program that kicks off religious school for families who choose to do it, where students and kids learn parallel to one another and then every once in a while come together for joint learning. And this was kind of a capstone dinner at somebody's house. And so I got to see, and they got to utilize the prayers that they'd been learning throughout the course of the year at the Shabbat table. And it was wonderful. And it's great to kind of have an intergenerational Shabbat, to go from those young families to then the intergenerational group that we have here, and to see just a wide swath of the community all together, doing their own thing in disparate parts is one of the things that makes TNT so wonderful. So with me gushing, we're going to turn to page 20 and we'll join together for L'Chadodi.
So what I told them was that we leave a seat for Elijah.
Ah.
Elijah was not sitting here, but you would be back.
Oh, good.
Page 20. Lechadodi likrat kala yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabelai yidai yidai lechadodi likrat kala yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabelai Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad Hishmianu el hamyuchad Adonai echad, u'shmo echad, l'shemu tiferet, v'litchila. Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nekabelai, yai, lechad dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nekabelai, likrat Shabbat, lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor ha-bracha. Merosh mikedem nesucha, sof maaseh b'makshavat tchila.
Let's hear you.
Lechad dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nekabelai, yai, lechad dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nekabelai.
Verse 5.
Hitoreri, hitoreri, kiva orek umiori, uri, uri, shir daberi, kevod Adonai, alayik nigla. Lechad dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nekabelai, yai, lechad dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat.
Nekabela. We rise together, verse 9.
Boi v'shalom, ateret bala, gam b'simcha uvetzola, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, boi chala, lechad dodi. Yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nekabelai, yai, lechad dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nekabelai.
We remain standing, page 28, Baruch Hu.
Yada dai dai dai, 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 yada dai dai dai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. Leolam Vaed. Yada dai dai dai, 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 yada dai dai dai.
We're seated together. We're on page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way in which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of tide, of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. Page 32.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha avta, Amcha avta. Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu lemadata, Otanu lemadata. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shokbeinu uvkumeinu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu yorech yameinu Uvahem nege yomam v'layla, nege yomam v'layla. V'ahavatcha al tasir, mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Page 36.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol meotecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha, vidibarta bam, b'shiftecha b'veitecha, uvlechtecha v'derech, uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, Uvisharecha leman tiskeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem lelohim Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet.
In a moment, we're going to turn to page 40, and we're going to join together in Micha Mocha, the prayer that the Israelites, or really the song that the Israelites sang as they crossed the sea toward freedom. And every once in a while, I like to ask the question and come to different answers because there's no good answer, or real answer. Why is it that every single time that we pray, we tend to always remind ourselves about the Exodus from Egypt? And of course, there's many answers that it engenders empathy in ourselves, that it's part of our history. But recently, I was thinking about the fact that remembering that we came from a dark place and that we moved toward freedom is important so that we don't end up going back there. If you've read the whole of the Torah, and it kind of is buried in the middle of the summer, so some may not know this portion, the Israelites start complaining to Moses, saying to Moses, after having sojourned in the wilderness for 40 years or so, they say, look, we want to go back to Egypt. Egypt had amazing food. It had zucchini, it had melons, it had cucumbers. And we're tired of the kind of food, the kind of lifestyle that we've been living as we've been wandering in this desert. We want to return. We want to go back. The things that they missed out on caused them to forget about the darkness from which they came. I imagine that if every day they were reminded about that darkness, reminded about the joy of freedom, reminded about the grasping that their ancestors, the generation before them, did to finally get that breath of air out of the narrow, constricted world that was Egypt, they never would have romanticized it. They never would have complained about those zucchinis, those melons, those cucumbers. Instead, they would have understood what freedom meant. And so each time we pray, we are reminded of that exact thing. To realize that you can find nostalgia for the darkest of places, but that isn't always healthy. We're going to turn to page number 40.
Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha netar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef eleh, nora tehilot osef eleh. Malechutecha rahu vanecha, bokei hayam livnei Moshe u'Miriam. Zelianu ve'amru, Zelianu ve'amru. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיחזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
Top of page 43. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporeh sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 44, Yismechu.
Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shvi Shabbat. Kulam yisbehu v'yitaku mituvecha Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. V'hashvi רצית בו וקידשו שבת, חמדת ימים, אותו קראת שבת, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג שבת, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג שבת, זכר למעשה בראשית שבת, זכר למעשה בראשית שבת, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג שבת, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג שבת.
We rise together, page 46. And after this opening meditation, we move in silence through page 62. You can be seated when you're finished.
Adonai sefatayv tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha.
Adonai sifatai tivtach ufi yagid tehilatecha.
Turn back to page 60 as we join together in Shalom Rav, the opportunity to grant abundant peace to Israel, your people, forever. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adon.
Lecho hashalom.
Oh, you do it.
כי אתה הוא מלך אדון, לכו השלום, שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. Please join me on page 253 as we do look on the page for the Mishaberach. However, we will turn our eyes to the screen in a few moments. And as I look around the room, I'll ask you if you'd like to add some names, as well as the folks that are on Zoom if they'd like to add some names in the chat. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. And I ask for names. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. There's so many things going on in the lives of our congregants. And I love when we get to celebrate just a really kind of momentous, wonderful milestone. And so I want to call up the Rakoff family now. Yeah, come on up to the bima. Because this week they celebrated 40 years of marriage. And it's rare in the kind of the secular world that we live in. And why doesn't we all rise? Because I'm going to open the ark to give them a blessing. It's rare in the secular world that we live in that 40 becomes such an important number. 50 is the big number, right? And you're 10 years away from that. But in Judaism, 40 matters. 40 is a big number. 40 actually is what they call a typological number. It just means a whole lot, right? In Noah's Ark, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Moses was on top of Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. The Jewish people wandered in the desert for 40 years. 40 matters. And the reason it matters, at least for 40 years, is because that's how long it took for the Jewish people to completely change. The Jewish people were made to wander for those 40 years because only by doing that could they get out of the mentality that they were in Egypt and then be ready to move into the Promised Land. 40 is considered a whole generation. And it matters in part because it is a time of transformation. And by 40, you somehow have transformed and gotten to a place where you want to be. Now, I don't know if that's true for the two of you, though I suspect that you're not the same people that you were 40 years ago. And it's said that you don't have one marriage, you have many different marriages over the course of the time that you are married because you are constantly changing. And the thing that allows a marriage to survive is that you can change with each other. Neither of you are the same people you were when you first got married. Your marriage, your relationship is different. You have wandered these 40 years together, and you are transformed, ready to enter that promised land that is to come. And so on behalf of the congregation, we congratulate you and wish you a continued journey in these next 40 years together and offer you this blessing. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'kuneka. May God cause God's face to shine upon you and give you grace. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God always smile upon you and grant you a life of wholeness and peace. As together we say, Amen. So congratulations. And we can be seated. So Shabbat Shalom. It's interesting. As I was thinking about what to speak about tonight, I could have spoken about any number of things. The most salient thing, at least on my mind right now, is the events that happened in Buffalo. And the fact that the hatred that pervades our country is all connected. Right? I learned recently that of the 100-page screed that the shooter had in Buffalo, 30 of those 100 pages were designated toward Jews. And in fact, this theory that exists in the world right now, the replacement theory, the idea that Jews are using their power in order to water down the demographic of the United States and to bring in people from abroad, is so pervasive and so scary, in part because it puts Jews front and center to all things that people hate. Now, that's not new. That's always been what has been the engine of anti-Semitism. Everything that people are scared of has found its way onto Jews. In times of capitalism, Jews were communists. In times of communism, Jews were capitalists. Jews somehow find a way to become the manifestation of the worst nightmare of any society in which they're in, which is the reason that they end up persecuted in their way. But as much as I thought about the ills that happened in upstate New York, there's so much other things that are on my mind as well. I think that part of the reason Buffalo hit me the way that it did is because I'm living in a generalized anxiety right now. And I don't know if you are as well. I'm carrying a lot on my shoulders, and that's actually what I want to talk about tonight. Buffalo added to the general sense of dread that I find myself in each and every day. And look, it comes in waves, and it's been coming in waves for many years now, and it's been coming in waves especially as COVID ebbs and it flows. But right now we are in another wave. I'm finding increasingly my kids keep getting sent home from school with exposures, And I don't know whether I can actually really plan my life because I don't know when the next exposure is going to be. I also find that I'm looking at the stock market, I'm looking at the economy, and I'm worried about what's going to happen with that. I'm worried about the future of people's portfolios, but also the future of people's jobs and the future, always, when the economy does fall, of the synagogue. I carry with me this sense of dread, and I actually don't know where to put my energy. I don't know whether to put it into fighting anti-Semitism. I don't know whether to put it into counseling people who are worried about their future jobs. I don't know whether to put it into looking into ways to mitigate or to live a life again in the face of COVID. I'm feeling increasingly like I am paralyzed by this sense of anxiety, by this sense of dread. And if I'm watching as people are nodding their heads, I'm feeling like probably many of us are feeling the same way too. Which is the reason we need one another more than anything else. There's an ancient debate in the Talmud, a law code from the 5th, 6th century. Two rabbis, Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Ashi. And the question is, when you are suffering, what do you need to do? Rabbi Ami says, the goal is to get through it, to grin and bear, because, by the way, time does pass. Things do change. But Ashi jumps in. And by the way, when the Talmud gives the last word to somebody, it often means that that last word is meant to stick in your mind. And Ashi says it's not about grin and bearing. It's about speaking. It's about vocalizing. It's about taking that kind of anxiety, that pain that is within you, and manifesting it, making it real. And only when you speak it to another person, only when you say, I'm worried, I'm scared, I am overwhelmed, do you actually have a sense of control over it. That, by the way, is the reason that psychotherapy works so well. In a way, I had a professor, a little bit related, but a little tangential, who used to speak about theology. And he said that if you can't describe it, you don't believe it. Therefore, if you say, I got a general feeling about God, the truth is, you probably don't actually believe anything unless you try to put it into words. And then when you do, you hear what it sounds like, and you say, do I actually believe that? And it helps you refine over and over again until you know truly what you believe. Well, psychotherapy works the same way, and speaking your truth, living as Rabbi Ashi tells us to live, that is the same. Because when we feel this general sense of dread, the only way to deal with it, the only way to improve, is to speak that truth. To name the fact that you are afraid, to name the fact that you feel trapped, to name the fact that you feel scared, to name the fact that you feel overwhelmed. And only when you hear those words come out of your mouth can you actually identify and say, do I like what I just said? Does that actually explain how I am? And if it doesn't, you try again. And you try again and again until you finally hit the nail on the head. And in doing so, it allows you a sense of control over what is happening to you. It allows you the ability to name that feeling. And then the feeling doesn't control you, you control it. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav once wrote, he's a rabbi from the 18th century, that every time that we suffer, every sin that we have, everything that hurts us gets etched onto our bones, and we carry it around. And in fact, it weighs us down. But standing in the footsteps of Rabbi Ashi, he says that if you speak that, if you speak the thing that is etched onto your bone, that's how to erase it. Which means that you have to find people enough in your life that you can trust and that you can speak to and that you can look to. And their job, by the way, is not to fix your problem. Their job is not to tell you what to do. Their job is just to be there. It is just to witness. It is just to hold the space. For you, the act of vocalizing is what will create your pathway out. Words matter in our tradition. In fact, when God created the world through speech. It doesn't say God made a magic cauldron and pulled out the first light, and that's what the light was that created the world. It said, Vayomer Adonai, and God said, let there be light, and there was. In fact, words matter so much that there is no difference between the word and the word thing. Davar means both, which is why the act of speaking itself not only creates words, but is tangible. It's something you can hold. It's something that you can touch. It's something that you can feel. We live in an epidemic of loneliness right now. And it's impossible often for many of us to see that there are those voices who are willing to hear us out when we do want to speak that truth. But I promise you, they are there. They are ready, they are willing, they care about you, and they love you. If only you trust them enough to let them in. But the truth is, we're going to find ourselves in times exactly like this. Because as I said, that anxiety ebbs and it flows. And the goal is to create the kind of relationships when you don't need them for the times when you actually do. And it's hard. I was talking to a congregant earlier this week. We were talking about the fact that for her, one of the hardest things about the pandemic was watching as many of, and she used gender here, many of the men in her life who hadn't cultivated those kinds of friendships where they could open up with each other, suffered a lot in the pandemic. And I have to tell you, I struggle with that too. I have wonderful relationships with congregants. I have not invested the time in my 4 years living here in Montclair to have those depth of relationships. But it's so important. Because when you can do that, when you can find a way to speak that truth, to erase those etchings on your bones, it means you have someone to help and carry you through. It means you have someone standing beside you when the next buffalo happens. It means you've got someone who can heed and hear you when you say that you're worried about the future of your retirement accounts. You have somebody who is standing beside you should you lose that job. You have someone who is there with you to say, I get how hard it is to navigate the unknown of the pandemic and what it means to have them to show up for you should you get sick or should you have to change your life around because someone in your family is quarantined. Finding those relationships are crucial. And it's relationships within our community, it's relationships with your neighbors, and especially in light of Buffalo, it's relationships outside of your community. It's making bonds with all of those people who are in that manifesto so that they can stand in solidarity with one another and say, I get it and I see you. So that when it's your turn and when it's our turn to be the victims, they can come to us. And when it's their turns to be the victims, we come to them. So don't be afraid to open up. But more than anything else, don't be afraid to acknowledge that it's really hard right now. And that's okay. Because luckily we have each other. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We're going to turn to page 282 as we rise for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech, malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Page 287.
V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu Yeh Adonai Echad, Ushemo, Ushemo, Ushemo Echad.
We're seated together. Our thoughts now turn to those that we've loved and that we've lost. This Shabbat, we recall the following individuals for whom we are observing a yard site: Maxwell Amazon, Lizbeth Brody, Mary Dodd, Saul Faig, Rebecca Fogelman, Helene Franklin Conyers, Max Frost, Paula Gash, Leopold Gattel, Sanford Gilberg, Rose Goldberg, Hilda Gordon, Linda Grishman, Joseph Gross, Sadie Hertzberg, Julius Hirsch, Abraham Nathaniel Ivner, Betty Kane, Morris Kirschenbaum, Henry Kolb, Abraham Krulowitz, Robert Lippman, Phyllis Mazel, Sharon Malkin, Libby Mankis, Richard Melman, Harriet Proper, Beverly Engelhard Rakoff, Benjamin Ring, Max Rosen, Rose Schwartz, Ben Sion Shapiro, Martin Siegel, Abraham Slater, Gloria Spitz Becker, Emmy Steinbach, Nathan Yaffe, and Stephen Zinn. And those who are in their Shloshim or Shiva periods of mourning, we recall Marilyn Brenner, mother of Beth and Larry Brenner, Miriam Cohen, mother of Ken Cohen, Richard Becker, brother of Stephen Becker, Jack Amazon, father of Suzette Unger, Joseph Ruffalo, brother of Jane Degenshine, Eleanor Ochfeld, aunt of Rachel Fedderson, and Robert Krentzman, husband of Barbara Krentzman. In addition, if there's anyone here who is within their first year of mourning or is observing a yard site of someone not on this list, whether family or friend, I'll invite you to rise and share their name now. We turn together to page 294, and we join together in the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayet l'chol Beit Yisrael, b'agala uv'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha barechu, le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiran b'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehei shalom Rabbah min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Please be seated. So a few announcements. The first is tomorrow morning, we have our Torah study at 8:30. We've got a Tat Shabbat, or called Wake Up Shabbat, which is happening right outside at 9 a.m. And then 10 a.m., we are so excited that Kyle and Jackson will be called up to the Torah as B'nai Mitzvah at our regular Shabbat morning services. And we also have our casual minyan happening at that exact same time. In addition to that, we've got a host of other things going on, the most important of which is that on Sunday morning, bring some water and some sunscreen with you, because it'll be a hot one. But we have our big 5K fundraising road race, followed by our brunch in honor of two amazing members of our community, Lori Schifano and Maribel Leon, both of which who have been here for 20 or so years. So a combined 40 years. You'll be hearing me play with the number 40, plenty more than I did tonight for the rake-offs. And we can't wait to celebrate them. You can still sign up for the brunch and the run. There's still time, I'm pretty sure. Right, Nina? Yes. In addition, there's lots of other stuff going on. We are very close to the holiday of Shavuot, which is the holiday that commemorates the giving of the Ten Commandments. That's going to be on the 4th of June, and we're starting at 7:30. We have an amazing scholar, Yael Kanarik, who's going to come and speak about this project that she did of regendering the Torah. She took every masculine word and made it feminine, and every feminine word and made it masculine. And when you look at the Torah through those eyes, it's completely different, actually, and changes the way that you actually, I read the Torah kind of almost degendered. It forces you to read it and to see the role that gender plays in the Torah. It's pretty amazing, actually. And then a night of learning all the way through till 1 a.m. And so hopefully you'll join us for that. Next week is a normal Shabbat service. It's, of course, a holiday weekend. But the week after, which is going to be the 3rd and the 4th, we basically are celebrating our teens. So graduation Shabbat is going to be on the 3rd. Confirmation is going to be Saturday morning on the 4th. And so it'll be a really exciting time to hear from, from the mouths of people who have grown up here and who have learned so much here. And so hopefully you can join us for one of those two or both of those. There's plenty more. We'll leave it to you to look at our e-Garrett, our e-Blast for many more things going on, unless, Ron, you've got
Can I
something
do a
specific?
little commercial?
Sure.
Is there anyone that wants to lead services in the summertime, either Friday night or Shabbat? And if you think you can't do it, you definitely can. Speak to me because we're rounding up the service leaders.
Perfect. So we are...
And if you want to chant Torah, same thing for Shabbat morning.
Good, yes. So Saturday and Friday night during basically July and August is lay led. And so it's a big, important tradition in our community. And we want to help you to do that if you want to. So with that, we're going to conclude our service today with the singing of Biado, page 321, or you can turn your attention to the slide.
Biado avki ruchi, bi'et ishan v'yahira, v'im ruchi geviati, Adonai li v'lo ira, v'im ruchi geviati, Adonai li v'lo ira. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Adonai in your hand. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Save me in your hand.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Make a point, introduce yourself